Thank you for joining us for Public Safety Echo. The Public Safety Echo project is the world's first of its kind effort to use the Echo model to address safety issues by bringing residents, workers, and businesses together in an online social and professional space to share skills, increase knowledge, and solve problems. In weekly sessions, Public Safety Echo teaches skills, educates partners in different aspects of a healthy community, and empowers community members.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining the Downtown Public Safety Echo. Of course, I'm your coordinator, Daryl Deloach. Happy to see folks hopping on today. Unfortunately, I do not have an officer to join us, but please, if you can, turn on your camera. Echo is all about all teach, all learn. And we will forego having everybody introduce themselves. I was looking for some new names, new faces. I see Nicholas Saez. You want to say hello and let us know where you're joining us from? I don't hear you, Nicholas.
I think I got it fixed.
There you go. Oh, okay, you're...
Nicholas Ice here. I'm with Heading Home, Street Connect.
Hey, yeah. You finally got here instead of Marlene.
Yes, correct.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Nick. Now I know who you are and recognize the face and the name, and I'll probably have questions that I'll direct to you now that you're joining us.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks
Sure.
for having me.
All right. I'll let everyone know the Downtown Public Safety Echo's goal is to increase safety by bringing residents, workers, and visitors together and in an online environment and social space to share skills, increase knowledge, and solve problems. Any views expressed by police officers or participating city officials are not meant to give legal advice and are only meant to educate and provide insight into the discussion. Today's presentation is state housing initiatives with our friend Maria Wolfe. You want to say hello and introduce your role in the housing initiatives?
Sure. My name is Maria Wolfe, and I work with the Office of Housing, which is a new state office in the Department of Workforce Solutions. And so I report to Secretary Nair, and she reports to the governor. And this office was created with the funding that the legislature allocated last year for housing and homeless programs. And I can go into more detail on that with the presentation.
Sure, well, we'll get to that shortly. I just wanted to make some brief announcements. Let me get those up here. There we are. So yeah, we have, where are my announcements at? There we go. So tonight at 6 p.m., the Valley CPC meeting is going to happen at Wells Park Community Center in the Johnny Tapia room. I like that it's called the Johnny Tapia room.
I tutored him.
You did? Wow. I met him.
Grade.
I met him a couple times. He was a nice guy.
He's a very nice guy.
And he liked to goof around and be real silly, and he'll always be remembered for that as well. Also this weekend is the big international fest at Phil Chacon Park, hosted by our County Commissioner Adrienne Barboa, as well as District 6's City Councilor Nicole Rogers at the new and improved Phil Chacon Park. They're going to have all kinds of stuff there, vendors, zip lines. I got to actually check out that pump track, but it should be a fun time there. As well as, I don't know if anyone has had a chance to check out the wonderful sculptures that are the fantastic creatures from Mexico that are lining downtown and around Robinson Park. There's some real interesting, I keep trying... Albrijes, yes. Albrijes. That have been enlarged and stuff. I meant to have the, let me bring up the website if I can.
You know, when my husband and I were down in Oaxaca, gosh, a long time ago now, but we got to go to the village where a lot of those are made and meet a lot of the artisans, and you just walk the streets and go pop into their studios, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so there's a little website here with them, and it does sort of feature the show and some of the pieces. Let me see if it'll show. My internet is a little slow. There we go, but these lovely creatures are all over downtown and around Robinson Park, and they're here for a few weeks, so I definitely recommend going and getting you a few selfies with them. That's what we do these days.
Check out some sculptures and hit one of the restaurants downtown.
Yeah. I like where they're placed as well. So I was in watching them get put up this weekend and stuff.
Yeah.
And what other announcements are there? Are there any announcements from the community? In fact, Mike, you were talking about the ranked choice voting thing. Did you want to share that?
Well, I can do that, but I was just typing in the information about the monthly meeting at the Gateway Center
Oh, yeah, okay.
at 6:30 till 8, southeast section of Gibson and San Mateo. You park in the west lot and enter at the west entrance.
All right, and then go ahead.
And I don't have the agenda in front of me, but it's open to the public.
Fabulous, thanks. I was going to give a moment for anyone else for any announcements. And
Do you want me to talk just briefly about the ranked choice?
yeah, go ahead.
Debate?
The Braver Angels, that's also this weekend?
It's Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock at the UNM Continuing Education Center. We have a very moderated approach to doing a debate on ranked choice voting, and I will just put the registration link into the chat.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that, since we were talking about that a couple days ago. And he participated or joined us for the de-escalation training that the CIT unit offered. There was a lot of community members and businesses there, so I always like to point out that de-escalation training is something that the CIT unit is happy to offer to community members and businesses in the corridor throughout Albuquerque, really. And you can always contact me. I have offered that training as well for different organizations around town, just to give you some communication skills and understanding of just how to offer help or deal with some of those crisis situations that we sometimes encounter, even if it's just talking to a friend who's depressed or things like that. So I always recommend that training when it is offered, and you can always contact me for more. Now, why is my computer, there we go. I'm going through my thing too fast here. Let's move on to our presentation. Although, in lieu of a case, our friend Peter of the Downtown Albuquerque News had run a crime issue, crime index, and he really does an extensive job of sort of breaking down the crime statistics in the downtown area and the different neighborhoods. But one thing that he pointed out that I really wanted to ask the audience on the call today to just sort of give me some feedback on is that while our homicide numbers, we've matched last year's numbers so far, 50% of the homicides that occur in Albuquerque occur downtown. And it's also something that appears to be a trend in those things. So I just wanted to sort of ask the audience to just sort of give me their opinion as to why they think those homicides keep occurring downtown. You can just shout it out, your response, or type it in the chat. But it was just a question that I myself was sort of trying to come up with an understanding of. In fact, if you don't give me an answer, I'm gonna call some people out and put them on the spot. Someone like Betty Lou. Why do you think, Betty Lou? I know you're always quiet on the call, but you have some insight. And Maria's here, so you can say hello to Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Hey, Betty Lou.
So, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah. Well, the statistic recently was of all of the city's homicides, 50% of the homicides occur downtown. And it's sort of been a trend for the last few years. And I'm just curious as to why people think that type of violence is being brought downtown. Because it's not necessarily people downtown that are doing it, it's people who are coming here. So I'm just curious if you had an opinion or an idea on that, Betty.
Well, I usually really don't come downtown after 5. Maybe I would think that there's a lot of the bars that are the bar life.
Well, and that's it too. I think we have this perception that downtown is dangerous. And I also sort of think of, that statistic as one of the things that really makes people feel that way. And if the statistics show that, then there might be some credence to that perception. So even the fact that you choose not to come down here in the evening is sort of testament to that. How about you, Nick? You work around downtown. You see a lot of the stuff going on. Do you have an idea, like, why do you think that violence is occurring down here?
Yeah, definitely. I would have to, attribute yeah, I guess depending on the times, if it's later in the afternoon or at night, definitely a lot more places open. It's lit up. Could be more people out and about, so it could attract more people. But if it's during the the mornings or middle of the day, it just could be maybe just businesses open. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it happens more later in the afternoon or at night.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's usually evenings that these things are occurring, early in the wee hours of the morning and that stuff. Sort of random violence as well.
It's just the lights. It's a place that looks like you can see it's stuff's available, and it's somewhere it's lights attract the bugs. So open business lights can attract people.
Well, that's even what I was sort of getting. I sort of feel the perception of downtown being dangerous is also the draw to come down here to do these things or to engage in this dangerous activity. I'm not really sure. It was just
self-fulfilling.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that we have this perception that downtown is dangerous and wild, and so that sort of is why people come down here to engage in those sort of activities. So it was just a question that I had. Again,
a question I have on that is, was that in the core downtown or the broader definition of downtown? So is it like the core geographic area, or is it like the
well, it was the broader geographical area. It also includes Old Town to Lomas, and it isn't just the core of downtown. But in this area, a lot of that stuff occurs, and I was just curious as to why that seems to be the trend, because I had also noticed in the article that it has been that way repeatedly for a couple years, that downtown tends to be the place that most of those homicides occur. Well, I'll definitely look into it more in coming sessions, maybe even try to get some ideas from homicide detectives, but we'll see.
Or look at other downtowns and other cities and see, are they seeing
do they
similar
correlate
sort
and
of
similar?
numbers?
But I do
Yeah.
recommend, if you're not a subscriber to the Downtown Albuquerque News, he does a great job of compiling information and what's going on and that kind of stuff. So it was a very interesting article, and I just thought I'd share that one component. In other recent issues. Oh, sorry. No, I'm reading my thing about that. An issue at the center of a lot of the problems that we face is enough affordable housing. Creating options for those that are in most need is a complex issue. And hopefully, Maria, our friend, you have some ideas about how this problem is being addressed.
Well, I have a whole presentation about it, so I hope
Cool.
you guys are ready for that. Do you want to go ahead and bring up my
Yeah.
presentation?
Let me share that real quick. Make sure I'm on the right one. Oops, sorry, I'm not.
Oh, you were close.
Yes, I had it there. There we go. Sorry.
It'll be up in just a minute. So great to see so many familiar faces. Thanks for jumping on today, Mike. I miss seeing you every month at the Gateway Center meeting. And, it's great, Nick, to see some new faces on the Heading Homes Street Connect team. It'll be great to meet some of you guys and hear what you're up to these days. And Betty Lou, I miss you for sure. So it's great to see you on here, and hopefully a couple of the officers are listening in the background as usual. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. Sure. I want to let you know the Office of Housing team is made up of 4 people right now. And so I come to this from working with the city on homeless programs, and then prior to that working with a public safety ECHO. And so was trying to bring that balanced approach to working on homeless issues with an understanding of how public safety is trying to work with it, but also how funds and resources are being allocated for the various services that we're trying to have in place so that you have a good safety net, can help people get on track to stable housing. Because one thing we absolutely know, and if you guys need those numbers, I can provide them, but we know that it's less expensive to get somebody stably housed than to continue providing services and interruption of problem behaviors when they're living on the streets. And so the programs that we can get developed that get people into stable housing and then allow them to stabilize in so many other areas of their behavior health, their physical health, family life, that's how we end up with healthier communities overall. And this is why we want to have those funds used effectively. So I work, I came to the state last September after being in the city working on their homeless programs. I work with a person named Rosalind Gallegos, who is a licensed social worker. She comes from Cuba, New Mexico. Nice. She worked downtown over at Siembra Leadership. And so she has a ton of experience in working with direct casework, working with people with really serious issues, and getting them into the right setting. And so she has an excellent clinical background that I don't bring to the table. I bring more the policy resource side. She's got that clinical look that can help us really look at programs in a really critical way, not being critical as a negative, but critical in looking at what really needs to be in place. Lisa Yuval, I don't know how many of you remember Lisa. She had worked at the city as the housing deputy director for years. And so she has a real depth of knowledge on housing issues, worked in housing development, worked also in homeless programs back when I was running the ECHO. She was the city person I brought to the ECHO table to talk about housing issues from the city perspective. She left the city, worked at HomeWise for quite a few years. So she was working on those assisted loans for first-time
first-time
home
buyers,
working on those developments for affordable housing. And so she's come now to the state to work with us on our the housing side, the bricks and mortar side of the work we're doing. And so I'm just so delighted that Lisa joined our staff. Forrest Dudek is another person on our team. He works out of northern New Mexico more, but he's running our youth programs.
Okay.
So we have a federal grant right now for the state of New Mexico on the homeless homeless systems initiative. Systems Improvement Initiative.
Okay.
It's called like a YESI grant.
Okay.
And in that grant, they're working with youth who are actually homeless across the state to get their input on what parts of the system worked for them, what did not work, what do they need to do to make things better. Because when we're talking about somebody who's like 16 to 25 or even 12 to 25 who becomes unhoused, who loses their home, this is a group who needs to be connected to school, needs to get stable housing, needs to get connected to jobs. Otherwise, they're just going to struggle the rest of their lives.
Yeah, they'll never get that footing.
This is the opportunity to really build systems that work for those folks, right? And so Forrest is working on that project and then helping with a lot of the issues up in northern New Mexico, things that are going on in Espanola with their unhoused population, things that are happening in Santa Fe with their shelters. And so we're lucky. Forrest comes to the table with a background where he worked for the Coalition to End Homelessness, and he's worked on youth programs. So he just brings a rich background as well. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if this is a question for him or you, but I wonder, are there some differences in the struggles for youth up north that maybe youth in the city aren't dealing with, or vice versa? Because I know the substance use and that sort of thing is pervasive, but Espanola and up north has a little bit of its own problems there.
Yeah, so up north, every part of the state, every region has something that's a little bit special and different that they're dealing with. But in general, when we're talking about rural communities, job opportunities, education opportunities, and then sometimes a youth in a small community, they get that reputation, and so they just need to be able to have a fresh start somewhere. And we need people who believe in them and are going to work with them, right?
And so that's the same everywhere.
And it's the same everywhere. But up north, you have the geography of scale. If they're in a tiny town and the nearest service is 90 miles away, how do you get them there? So there are issues like that we struggle with across our state and our rural areas, but we're trying to figure out how to close those gaps and to make sure that no matter where somebody is, they have access to the help they need.
Right, because it doesn't work to just send everybody to Albuquerque. We need to have that reach far and wide.
We need to, the healthiest thing for people is to get help in the community where they know people, right? I mean, if we make people come to what I call the big bad city for all the assistance that they need, they're cut off from their natural support groups. And getting them reconnected to family or friends in those communities is even harder. So we need to help people be successful where they are. And be stable where they are. So we'll talk more about that. So this is just some of the by numbers information that's out there. When we're looking at what are we talking about with homeless or housing insecure, food insecure, the numbers are anywhere from the actual pit count, which was that 1,723 for the balance of state. The Albuquerque pit count was at 2,960. Now, of course, this is for last year. We'll see what the numbers look like this year. And then when you look at that 10,533, those are the folks that, like, through McKinney-Vento are reporting either, couch surfing, 2 families in one house, or they're living at grandma's house. It's a broader number because these are people who don't have their own home. And that can impact their stability down the road, because one of the highest indicators of somebody becoming homeless is when their name is not on the lease. Because you're living with somebody and then something happens, like your dog eats the couch and then you're kicked out. Or
health issues, anything.
Health issues, or just whatever it is. So recognizing that when we're talking about, you have actual homeless, and then you have your housing insecure folks. And that can be like bad roommates. You're renting a place with so-and-so, and then they get a new boyfriend or girlfriend and they're horrible, and it all falls apart, and then that person doesn't have enough assets to be stable on their own or to go to the next step. So that's what that is. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay.
I have a lot of slides, so some of these I might go through fairly quickly, but we're going to share them. So I think Nick is going to appreciate this slide because it shows, like, sort of all of the times and resources and interruptions, but like the reason for the wavy line is just to show, like, this isn't easy. It's not a linear line either. Like, you don't have a straight from unhoused to stably housed line for anybody. They're going through different services, they're following referrals, they're not following referrals. They need somebody to actually put them in the car and take them somewhere for that next step.
Sometimes there's barriers and there's different things that they have to accomplish to even achieve get on the list, and
Exactly. So part of the reason we put this together, I think most of the people who are on here are already familiar with this because you guys are familiar faces to me. So you know a lot more about the systems and the complexity than most. But, I think this slide is worth always bringing up to remind us what we're dealing with. So go ahead and go to the next one.
Well, and that's one of the things that I'm always sort of mentioning, just about for those individuals who are on the street, just the daunting sort of aspect of trying to navigate that network. It's something that, if like you're saying, just the difficulty of trying to deal with that when you're couch surfing or trying to hold down a job when you don't have a vehicle, or all these little things. Man, I would imagine that's just a very frustrating thing to deal with.
Well, and part of it too is, like, I think there's a fair amount of talk about, like, how much money is going into this versus how much it would cost to house them. And I just want to say, like, if we had a house for every person to put them into, that would be so amazing. But when we're talking about, like, 10,000 plus who are, housing insecure, when we talk about the 20,000 plus who are on that homeless management information system who have indicated that they need help with housing, there's just those are huge numbers, right? And so, and then even tomorrow, there will be somebody who's not on that list right now who's going to end up in a place where they need help. And so, in our society, in our system, we're always working with folks that hit that bump in the road, hit that wall, where they need some help and they just don't know where to turn next. And so that's part of the reason we have the variety of different programs. Now, this slide is specifically talking about investing in housing. And so what I want to make super clear is that for a good 20 plus years, there has not been the investment in affordable housing that we had back before the 90s. So when we look at the gap in affordable housing, definitely since the 2020s, we're seeing this increased cost in housing, right? And there's a number of factors that come into play for that. We're seeing the increase in rent. We're seeing the increased cost in building. So many things are happening right now that are impacting how people can afford housing. Then we also see the changes for food assistance. We're seeing the changes even in insurance requirements. So if somebody has a mortgage and they have to have insurance and the insurance goes up and it's a senior on a fixed income, they can't afford it and they can't afford to stay in that house at that point. So on the full spectrum, we're seeing people get impacted by the changes that are happening all too rapidly now. So a big part of what we've been working on in the last year in the Office of Housing is getting funds into communities across the state for affordable housing. So these are projects where a portion of the project is getting public funding, and then what happens is a portion of the project is affordable units. And the thing that's great about that is then you don't have a whole project
that's only
folks who are struggling, right? You have a good mix in there, and when you have a good mix, you have that opportunity for networking, for talking to somebody as you walk up the stairs, or helping somebody carry their groceries up the stairs, and I'm up for a job, or I have a niece or a nephew, and that's a lot of how things work in communities. And so the state legislature last year allocated $110 million in one chunk of funding and then some additional funding. And that funding, we've been working hard to get it into these projects so that we have affordable units. And so you can see the 945 in the Albuquerque Bernalillo County area, and that number's gonna go up because about 3 million more is going into renovation of homes that are substandard. And that's a big part of what the county is working on as well.
And would these be grants to the owners, or how does
so there's this program where if you have a house that's pretty run down, it doesn't have a good heater, cooler, got some plumbing, electrical issues, they will go in and renovate these houses. They're usually for seniors and low-income folks, and they'll go renovate the house, and then you live in that house for a certain number of years to not make you have to pay it back. If you sell that house, you're already the owner of the house. If you sell that house within a certain amount of time, you have to pay back the amount.
The cost.
So that's part of how that works. But throughout our state, we have a number of substandard houses. We have houses that don't have air conditioning, don't have good heating systems.
Swamp coolers aren't cutting it anymore.
And so that's part of what we're investing in, is helping people stay in their homes, make their homes healthy places, and that helps everybody across the state. Then the other thing, I'm looking to see if it's on here. Gallup Housing Authority. I'm just going to point this out because I think this is an exciting thing. So Gallup Housing Authority over on the right side there, that 300,000. So what they wanted to do is they're making available for home ownership. So it's not just new rentals and affordable rentals, but it's also trying to make home ownership accessible to people at lower incomes. Because having those assets in the family is that foundation that I think everybody on this call has those assets in your background, right? You come from a family that owns a house.
It's
you
that
probably
economic
own
engine.
your own house too. Or you probably are getting ready to buy your own house. So you have those assets in your family. What we want is more people in our state to have those assets. And so when we look at the Gallup project, they have a number of houses that they've just built. And I think that they built them for $250,000, and what they're doing is, with this state funding, is they are making it so that people who have jobs, who are at, I think it was 30 to 60% of adjusted median income, and so they're providing up to $50,000 of down payment assistance for that house. And then the people are eligible for buying that house with that assistance. And then if they live in the house for 10 years, they don't have to pay that $50,000 back.
Wow.
And that's a huge step towards creating some equity, allowing people to get assets. And that's the kind of thing that we can do when the community comes together and says it's important for us to help people own their own homes. And HomeWise is one of the programs that helps people figure that out. They have some funding to do some of that as well. And so I just called that out because I actually sat down with the Gallup Housing Authority and really went through it, saw the houses. They're beautiful places. I mean, they're not fancy. They're in a nice neighborhood. It's just a solid investment in that community for folks that need just a little bit of help to get that house and actually own their own house.
As you pointed out, it's just the basis for all the other things that help you sort of grow, just that, equity and the ability to do other things and to live a little more comfortably and over time that investment is an investment that you could use for other things. It's just something that I feel a lot of people aspire to, but very few are able to sort of figure it out
It's
themselves.
so far out of reach for so many people. And especially young people who are graduating from and starting their first time jobs. Like the job market's harder now. AI's made a lot of changes. So
and the
I don't want to go too far down that road. But anyway, the other thing I want to point out is like in the Albuquerque area, you can see funding has gone for Tierra Linda, for the Uptown Connect, the Wells Fargo building. It's not listed on here now, but I know a small chunk has gone to the Gizmo. Because Gizmo, if you haven't had a presentation on that yet, did you guys yet?
Well, I have talked to Sherry over there.
She's
and,
amazing.
And I love what they've done there, and I'm sure as they get closer, we'll have her on here to talk about.
They're doing an exciting project with artists and re-entry from jail and having some supportive housing built in and artwork and studios and gallery. And when you have her, make sure she brings some good slides because I got to walk through that facility and it's magical, the changes to the Gizmo. That's going to be a game changer for Central Avenue, and it's such a relief to finally have that building fixed.
I went through early on when it was still just sort of demo, but I'm really excited to see what they do.
So, okay, next one. So, next slide is looking at, and I actually meant to move this slide, but anyway, this is a slide that just talks about some of the homelessness program supports that we've put into place this last year for providing that service support. So balance of state, COC funding, the federal grant wasn't funded for the balance of state continuum of care, and so the state has picked up that for this year and for next year. The 3-city outreach for high utilizers, that's for Gallup, Albuquerque area, and Espanola to really look at those highest utilizers of emergency services and hospital services to try to get them more stabilized. And so go ahead and go to the next one. Sorry, that one is out of order. You're going to see a better slide for it. So we work with a variety of folks. One of the things I'm working on is an interagency council across state agencies. Because when you look at homelessness and housing issues, the thing to remember is that it's not just like the Office of Housing that's working on this, right? The Healthcare Authority oversees the Turquoise Care folks. They're the ones that are running all of the Medicaid-funded healthcare programs. So like if somebody's on Presbyterian or United, somebody gets sick, they get out of the hospital, and then they end up, on the streets, or they end up at Gateway West, or, and so working with them on what's available, what support is available through that avenue is important. The the Healthcare Authority also oversees the behavioral health suppliers across the state. And so the Linkages program is a housing voucher for people with diagnosed behavioral health. So serious mental illness. So this is for that person who has schizophrenia, psychosis, PTSD, who they're going to have a very hard time holding down a full-time job that will pay the rent, right? And so putting that support in place for that behavior health challenged person, where they're going to get a housing voucher, but they're also going to get those check-ins that are appropriate for whatever their diagnosis is.
Yeah.
And so that is the Linkages program, and they have those across the state, but not in all communities, because Linkages, you have to have an agency who's going to pay the rent and deal with the landlord,
Right.
but you also need the agency that's going to take
Show
care of the
up and look-
behavior
yeah,
health
they-
and check in on the person and make sure they're staying connected and getting their meds or
Yeah.
whatever's going on with them. So we have programs like Nick, I think Heading Home might be one of the Linkages providers. I know Healthcare for Homeless, First Nations, and Barrett House are all Linkages providers. But there are parts of the state that aren't covered, like Raton does not have a Linkages provider right now. Because they can't cover both of those bases. So we're looking at some options of like, can a behavior health organization maybe work with an online payment portal to work with the landlord, and could that work? Or is there an organization like Dream Tree out of Taos? They cover Rio Arriba, Taos County, and parts of Colfax County. You know, can they go all the way to Raton?
So it's really
yes, you
piecing
have
it
to have the
together, yeah.
layers, because the people who are good at behavior health are not necessarily going to be good at property management issues.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's a different skill set. So we have, and then we have had sometimes where the behavior health component is taken over by, I mean, the property management side is taken over by that behavior health side, because they just want to make it work better.
Yeah.
And so it's great to see when people build capacity and can take both of them into one house. But anyway, so that just gives you some idea. Public Education Department has been a huge partner this next year. I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing with them. Coalition to End Homelessness, I just spent a couple hours meeting with them yesterday, and we're looking at stuff across the state all the time on the system and how to do improvements. So go ahead and go to the next one, and we'll go into more. So I talked a little bit about the youth system improvement grant, that YESI grant that Forrest is running. I want to also just talk a little bit about the family stabilization programming. So this is a program where in the schools, those McKinney-Vento people who run the Title I programs for those really at-risk students have identified the families who are really struggling. And so what we've done is create a system where the family can participate in these specific programs, and they literally get cash to help pay the rent.
Yeah.
And so this is direct through the schools, direct to those families, and it's being done with a really close scrutiny on the outcomes of those families, so that we can show what's really happening as a result of that direct investment. Right. So you're going to see more on that due to our partnership with CNM and with Highlands University, and doing that follow-up, and I'll tell you more about that.
Well, because I think I even saw some information about it's been a year for the families, I believe, in the ID that had that assistance. And those numbers and the results are coming back from just what that assistance has been able to help them do.
So looking, having that solid data is going to be really important to any future funding opportunities we have. And if you don't collect the data, you might as well not have done it, and you're never going to get funded again. So that's how the world works. But this just gives you a little bit more information about some of the programs that are available now for supportive housing for youth. And so we invested a chunk of money in expanding shelter for families experiencing homelessness. So the city of Albuquerque has had their family shelter, and I'm not sure if they're at 60 families still or if they've gone up to 75. They were talking about going up to 75. Now Bernalillo County has also bought a hotel, and they it's the Ponderosa Hotel down here in the valley. Unfortunately, right after they got it, something happened, I think, with the sprinkler system.
Oh, no.
And so they're having to fix it. So it's not full right now, but they're supposed to reopen it in October, and it should be able to hold 75, 76 families. That means like 300 people, because each room has, you know, a parent or parents and then a number of children.
Yeah.
And then they have a couple of rooms that are suites for those larger families. And so this is huge, because we need to really have a stable place for families. We need to have kids be able to go to the schools and not, you know, be wondering how they're going to sleep the next night and where they can do their homework. The other investments were in getting that young adult gateway up and running. So the city built it. The state has funded the first months of operation of it. And then you can see the family stabilization project that's going out through the three communities that had the family stabilization funds first are Santa Fe, Las Cruces, and APS. They're working on continuing that this year and going out to a couple of other communities, so they're just trying to ramp up slowly, but looking at the outcomes to make sure that it's appropriately used and that the outcomes are making a difference for those families and especially those kids, reducing those adverse childhood experiences that end up impacting mental health down the road is really important to us. So.
Well, and you mentioned the data, and even before, I mean, talking about people who are incarcerated and all this, I don't think we really take into scope what that, when we aren't spending the money, how we actually end up spending it anyway, and the outcomes are worse, and it really bodes us to spend these funds in a way that we can really help some people become part of the community.
Yeah.
I feel like they're so on the outside that, you know, bringing them in is what this is all about.
Yeah, and having that wraparound service, filling those gaps so that they don't fall through the cracks and into a hole that's so hard to dig out of.
Yeah.
So,
Next
go to the
line,
next
there we go.
one. So one of the things we got to do last winter that we were just excited about, because they were micro grants. Some of these grants were like $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. To like Deming, New Mexico. They had a lot of kids that didn't have coats, didn't have winter clothes, winter shoes. So, you know, $10,000 makes a huge difference in a community like that. Cuba, New Mexico, same thing. We also in Hobbs, Hobbs doesn't have a shelter. They have a domestic violence shelter, but they don't have a shelter for people experiencing homelessness. And there are a lot of oil field workers out there, and there's a real shortage of housing. And so they just have a lot going on in that community too. So we just set up a program with them where they set up backpacks that had the winter, you know, blanket that the person needed, some, you know, food and clothing, you know, just some of those basics that people need. So we asked them, like, what do you need in your community? They came back to us, and we did a wide variety. That very first slide that we had that had the room with all the cots, that was Gallup. Gallup didn't have a shelter. And so Gallup literally had a couple of people die before we could get this funding to them and out the door. But they had, you know, between 60 and 100 people in that shelter every night, and including families. That was the individual side, and then they had another room for families to be safe in.
And
So-
I have to ask the question too, like why is it we got so far down this road without shelters in these places? Was it just?
Yeah. So it's you know, it's hard to get shelters started. You have folks that don't want to shelter in their community.
No, not in my,
You know, and a lot of times everybody's blaming the individual for individual choices.
Right.
And we have to have some recognition that there's something going on in our society, that people are losing their housing. And so having a place for people to go is important, especially in the cold of winter and in the heat of summer.
Yeah.
And so we have right now some capacity grants for increasing the ability for these smaller communities that don't have a shelter to have a safe place for during the heat of the day. Because like Hobbs, Roswell, Carlsbad, it gets hot down there. And so they need to have a place, they need to have supplies to use when they're doing street outreach. They need those cooling towels and bottles of water, water stations for people to stay hydrated, because heat kills down in that area as much as cold kills up in the north. So that has been something we're excited to be able to just respond to those local needs on that micro level, as well as the more macro level, and really working on like, what does it take to set up a winter shelter? People try to do it and then things go sideways because they don't know what to get in place to avoid problems. And we need to make sure we have that technical assistance for that setup, that they have the assistance to get the cots and have the heat treatment to avoid bed bugs and all of those pieces that sometimes they don't think of it, and they're just trying to do a good thing, and then it goes south, and then they never want to do it again. We want to make it so that they don't go south. We want to make it so that it's a healthy experience for everybody.
And again, when they need to do it, sometimes it's because the planning isn't there in place, and you need to do it quickly.
Yeah. So I think my picture disappeared from this slide, but it was just a picture of people working on, job training. The reason that the Office of Housing was placed in the Department of Workforce Solutions is because for a percentage of this population, job training, job placement is an important part of the solution. It's not the solution for everybody, because we do have people who are disabled, who have serious behavior health issues that we have to have alternative responses for, right? But for some people, job training and job placement is the answer. And so one of the things we do work with throughout the state is the America's Job Centers, and we have them in all the communities around, not all, but most of the communities around.
Broadly.
And it is a way to get connected to lots of different services and assistance. So I just wanted to make it clear that that's why the Office of Housing isn't in the Department of Health. It's not in the Healthcare Authority. It's not in these other things, because they wanted to tie it to job placement where that is an option. One of the things that we have done this last year is we know New Mexico has a shortage of trained social workers, care coordinators, and people who know how to deal with folks who are struggling. So we've done kind of two layers of that, and one is we had a leadership academy for those who are the leaders of these nonprofit organizations that are providing services across the state. So Nick, Connie Chavez, your director, was one of the people who attended these sessions. They shared best practices and started building that community of practice, because we need them to work together to build each other up, right? We have to build capacity. People get upset when different providers end up going to out-of-state agencies. But part of that is because we just don't have the depth of ability.
The roster,
the
people.
We don't have the backup.
Yeah.
And so we have to build that up. And so the leadership training was one thing. They also did a frontline academy. And one of the things they did with this program is we recognized that, Nick, I know you work really hard, and I bet you don't get paid a ton. And so I'm just guessing. So what we did is we provided a stipend for each session that people attended, so that you recognize that, hey, this is a professional opportunity, and your time is valuable. We're going to pay you if you attend these things, because we want you to recognize it's valuable too. And in other organizations, people pay for these things for you. And so we wanted it to be valuable for everybody. And that was one of our partnerships with CNM together with Highlands University, in identifying what the training should be, creating the training, identifying who would be the best presenters from our communities
Right.
and how this works, and then sharing those best practices across. So from that, there also, I don't know if I have a slide on it, so if I do, we'll skip it, because I'll talk about it now, but we also are doing a promising practices review, looking across the state to identify promising practices in rural areas as well as urban areas that everybody should know about, and that we want to expand on and look at new ways to research what's really working. You know, whether it's a tiny community that has, you know, a great food distribution program for people who are food insecure, to, you know, a large community who's, you know, doing amazing things on healthcare. You know, we need to share the stories and make them available to everybody. And that's a big part of what I do as I go around, is try to connect people. I mean, I was literally at Joy Junction 2 hours ago, going through their systems and talking to them about the population they're working with. And they're, you know, really wanting to connect with the gateways and understand their services and see what it's like and invite them to come to their program, because when everybody is talking to each other and really understanding who can go where, who's accepting which folks, what's an appropriate placement, it just works better, and it helps make it more seamless for everybody.
Well,
So-
that people use the term warm handoff all the time.
Exactly. We need that to be a real thing, not just a thing we talk about.
So. And yeah, I mean, I you know, I see Nick downtown, and just sort of the, you know, the level of that continuum of care that really has to be achieved, and I just feel there's so many opportunities for people, and even before I had the collaborative peer workers on, and they were talking about all the different programs, and it's just one of those things that works, but not everyone really knows.
Well, and ECHO is always pushing the peer. And we should all recognize that. I can tell you, this middle-aged lady cannot talk to that person on the street and have them really think I have a clue what they're dealing with, the way that somebody who's lived experience can. So peers are so important as part of our system of care. And you know, I also have to just give a shout out, because Jeffrey Bustamante is on.
He's
and,
on.
And you know, ACS is also a game changer. Like they are. We are recognized nationally, internationally, for the work that ACS is doing. And I have to say, you know, you guys are taking a lot of calls every single day, we know it. And the thing that we have to recognize is that the opportunity for amazing change is there, and it's a big difference for our community. So,
and ACS is just one of those pieces that I feel we managed to put into place, but again, we need, you know, the roster. We need the people. We need, you know, the programs to be integrated in a way so that they can do their job well and they could have better outcomes. And
you got to have that pipeline development, so you have the people who have the expertise to work for these things. So, all right, Jeff, I'm glad I gave you a call out before you had to leave. So go ahead and go to the next slide.
Thanks for joining us.
I better hurry up. We're going to run out of time. Okay, so we've helped, you know, with funding emergency shelters. We've helped on prevention with getting houses rebuilt, getting rapid rehousing, and invested in landlord risk mitigation, especially down in the Las Cruces area, because Albuquerque and Bernalillo County are working on it here with their funds. We are working on that outreach, really looking at high utilizers. And LifeLink, you guys might not be familiar with them, but they're doing a lot of that outreach work in the Santa Fe area. And then, you know, really working on supportive housing for families. So go ahead and go to the next. I'm going to go a little faster, you guys, because it's 2:01 and this is supposed to end pretty soon. This was that other slide that I was telling you, I have that out of the right order. It was supposed to come after this one, but this gives you a lot more detail on where some of that funding is going, specifically helping gateways get up and running with their operation costs, helping Santa Fe, used to be called Pete's house,
Yeah.
Agape House, getting some renovations done, clearing out the bed bugs that were in the building, helping bring in a new provider in the Santa Fe area, this organization called Urban Alchemy. They've got a great model there. They do a lot of good work in Seattle, Portland, the Bay Area, and they brought it, here, and they are working with peers. They're working with reentry, doing that training, and they're doing some good work up in northern New Mexico. Bernalillo County Home Repair. This number is not right anymore. It's more than that. Because we took some money that wasn't being used by some of the other programs and we reallocated it. So I'll update this slide. But anyway, it gives you an idea of where the funds are going and how it's working. So go ahead and go to the next. So when we're looking at how to respond to the needs of folks, when we're going into a situation where you have somebody who's in distress, our first step is, are you okay? Where are you in terms of suicide ideology? How much, if you're using, how much do you have on board? Are you at risk on that? We need to understand their individual safety straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Then the next step is looking at what supportive services are available, what's their level of acuity, how do we connect them appropriately? And Nick, you can chime in here because you probably know all this better than I do. The financial ownership readiness is kind of for that next group of folks who have gotten themselves stabilized, and we're trying to get them set up to get those assets. And then we're just looking at all the time, what's that household composition? What is this person's individual goals? How do we help them meet those goals?
Right.
And that's the crazy hard part about this work, is it really has to be based on that individual. What are their goals? What are their needs? What are their abilities? And what is it they want to do? I mean, maybe they just want to, breed St. Bernard puppies and sell them. I don't know. But every person has something that they're wanting to accomplish next. And some of them don't have a long-term goal or a 5-year goal or even a 2-year goal because they just can't see beyond the very next meal or the very next morning. So that's part of the challenge in working with the population.
Yeah, they're always in crisis and just not able to see the forest for the trees. And I think that St. Bernard puppy thing was your...
Yeah, it's because I have a St. Bernard puppy.
That would be lovely to just breed puppies.
So what we have to do is help that person figure out what is the goal you're willing to work on right now, and explore abilities, help them see a way forward, and then figure out the resource mapping related to that goal. Look at what else is available. And then the absolutely key warm handoff, and I really mean it, we have to be able to drive them to the place and introduce them to the person to make the difference. And when we just send them down the street or up the hill or around the corner,
it doesn't take much to discourage them.
And they're gonna get lost a lot of times. So I just can't stress the need for that really warm handoff enough. So go ahead, the next one. How many more do I have here? I'm like, what else did I put in this?
We still have a little time.
So
I go over an hour normally, but not too much, but
Yeah, so again, this is kind of repetitive of what you've already heard, so I think you can go to the next level.
Oops, where did I go?
Okay, that was the end. I was I think we're getting to the end here because it's feeling repetitive. So I'm happy to take questions if you guys like. What do you think?
Let me see. Yeah, let's jump to some questions. And let me see if there was anything in the chat.
I didn't see anything chatty. Oh no, there's 4 chats. Sorry, I should have been watching the chats.
Yeah. Well, there was some information,
okay.
and Brittany was adding that there's a pizza with the police on June 30th, but I don't see any questions.
Nope.
Did anyone have any questions or comments about any of the information shared?
Hey, there's Rodney too.
Yeah, you can just shout it out. I don't see any hands or
You guys
questions.
are letting me off easy, I can tell.
Well, I mean, again, it was a very sort of extensive view at what's going on, and I.
Okay, let me tell you a little bit more about one thing that I
Okay,
don't
go
have a
ahead.
slide on, but it's really an important thing that I'm working on, I
Yeah.
think. I think it's important. One of the things in our state is we have standards for schools.
Yeah.
We have standards for healthcare centers. We have standards for dormitories and universities. We have standards for all kinds of things. But you know what we don't have standards for? Homeless shelters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we have is sort of a gap in how do you make sure that everybody is operating at least a minimum standard of safety, cleanliness, and an appropriate place for somebody to be in. And just because somebody is poor doesn't mean that they shouldn't be in a safe, clean place with dignity. So that's one of the things I'm working on is getting some statewide standards developed. And
For shelters.
for homeless shelters. Domestic violence shelters have standards.
Right.
We have standards for senior homes and for
Yeah.
nursing homes and all of those kinds of things. So what we're doing is we're putting together a set of standards that will bring everybody up to a minimum level at least.
Yeah.
Then we have desired level, where we recommend that these other elements are in place, or that you have a really strong MOU with another organization who can provide that if you can't. Really making sure that all of our shelters, all of our spaces that are being created to bring folks who are struggling, that it meets their needs, right? And I think that it's so important for us all to work towards that goal. So what we're trying to do with these standards is to have the facility standards. They're going to be based on the federal housing quality standards. Those are kind of a minimum, straightforward. Everybody across the nation is using the same thing, and it's pretty appropriate. So that's going to be the facility side.
I figured the public housing standards or what.
Yeah, it's like these are the standards that you can't use a voucher to pay for somebody to live in a house that doesn't meet these standards.
Okay, yeah.
It's like you have appropriate electrical access,
Yeah.
you have lighting, you have windows,
Water
you have
and
doors,
temperature
and you have
control,
heating and cooling, and your plumbing works.
Yeah.
Just kind of those basics that we always think of in a quality house, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking quality like
You don't have to have
Heights
golden
quality. I'm
chandeliers
talking
or
about
whatever,
just, you have a solid place that's safe and appropriate. And so that's the facility side. So
Yeah.
then there's the operations, training, staffing side. And so what we're doing for that is we're looking at the National Alliance to End Homelessness standards, which the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness adopted years ago as kind of a baseline. There are definitely some updates to that because the old standards didn't even mention staff should be trained on naloxone. So we're adding some of those things in that are current to the modern day. We're just making sure we're bringing together the shelter providers across the state, the folks who are running those shelters, to give us feedback, make sure we're not missing something. And we're inviting them to be part of the enforcement. Instead of the big bad state, big brother coming in and knocking on your door and checking you out and seeing if you're doing things right, what we're really looking for is to build that community of practice, those best practices, where shelter providers here go to shelters there, give feedback. It's an exchange, because I can tell you, as I travel the state, what they all want to know is what are other people doing?
Right.
And, and I was just in Taos, just like 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago now, but just got to know, hey, you mentioned those bed bug treatment things. What are they? And can you send me a link? And who's using them? And how's it working out for them? What's good or what's bad? And so I could send them the link and I can say, our problem is that sometimes people steal the heat elements, but if you do this, it works. And, the thing is you set it up so that when you're doing intake, you get all their stuff into the box while you're asking them a question and interviewing them for your intake. Their stuff is being treated, and then they go to their bed or their room. And this is just a great way to run things, and so then I'm down in Hobbs and I'm talking to their domestic violence, and they're like, yeah, we had an outbreak we had a bed bug thing, so we had to clear the room and do the thing. And I was like, oh, heat treatment boxes. And so, it's such a basic thing in some places, but you have to have ways of sharing this information with people in the same practice. Yeah. And so that's part of what we're working on as well. So, I'm kind of that policy wonky person, so I think it's exciting to get some standards going. We have some really amazing folks. Like, Heading Home's Albuquerque Opportunity Center is a great model for other people to see.
Yeah. Betty Lou threw a question in the chat there. Is there a requirement for income to participate in any of these programs? I mean, I guess there would be some, but most of them would probably be a low barrier.
So there are some shelter programs where people they require that you get a job and that you keep a job. Most of them don't require anybody to pay any portion, but they'll limit like how long you can stay. You can stay for 3 months, but you have to start working, and you can't be using, you can't be drinking, and some of them even do urinary analysis to make sure somebody isn't using or drinking while they live there. So those are called higher barrier shelters. Low barrier shelters just want to make it so that people come in off the streets. And so low barriers usually still are not allowing you to use on site, but they're not requiring sobriety to be able to come in. So, one of the reasons that the Gateway programs opened is because a lot of the shelters that were in the city already required sobriety. And they literally would breathalyze. They still do. They breathalyze people when they come in the door to make sure that there's nothing wrong with that. That's the population that those shelters are addressing the needs for, right? And there are people who don't want to be in a shelter with anybody else who's using, right? And so it just depends on the person's needs, and it depends on the goal and the focus of the shelter. If you have a shelter for people who are recovering, there needs to not be a lot of use on site, right? Or people who have been using on site, because then that can kick somebody back into previous habits. So we have to recognize the need for that variety of shelter spaces.
Still going to be those
and
people.
These standards are going to have that clarity that, hey, we're not telling you you have to do this or you have to do that. We're telling you you just have to make sure that you know what you're doing, and you can lay it out for other people, so that when Nick is trying to find a place for somebody, he knows where to send them. If you're recovering and you're in recovery, here's a good place for you. If
you'll be successful.
Are not in recovery and you're using, these are your options. If you have a dog, these are your options. If you have a family, these are your options. And so we have to be able to know who's doing what. And that's what it's calling for, is your operation should absolutely include your criteria for acceptance, what your intake looks like, and have it consistent across the board. So, okay, other questions?
Any other questions?
And Betty Lou, you were asking specifically about finance. So, most of the programs don't say, you have to tell us your financial information in order to be allowed in, because most of the people aren't going to go there unless they need help. And so what does happen in some of the shelters, like I was in a shelter in Roswell, and they require people to work, and then they require them to start saving up. So some of the shelters will monitor, are you putting money away since you don't have any expenses because you're living here, and how's that going? Because they're trying to get them on a financial stability space where they can get their own place. So, okay, other questions?
Any others? I don't see any
I
other
covered it all
hands.
so well.
Well, yeah, like I said, it was a lot of stuff to go over there, and definitely a lot of efforts being made to sort of fill the cracks in the sidewalk there.
Yeah.
And as you're pointing out, it's so easy with the way things have been for people to fall through the cracks and just not see those barriers as being too big for them to overcome. So I'm happy that we're trying to find other solutions and other ways of tackling this.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
And just, just be aware. I mean, there are the changes to Medicaid coming up that have work requirements, work, school, or volunteer requirements, and tracking it. And if people aren't reporting, they're going to lose their Medicaid.
Losses to SNAP, losses to,
So then that could result in losing housing. Because even people who have vouchers are often required to pay 30% of their income. And then when they lose their income, how that's working out with the landlords is going to be a real conflict point for a lot of folks. And so just knowing how these federal changes are going to impact us at the New Mexico level is a big part of the picture we have to address.
Well, we probably could have talked about this more. There's other aspects that I feel like we could have branched off in, and possibly we'll find other opportunities to do that. But thank you very much for coming and giving us all this information today. Again, I didn't see any other questions.
The only other thing I'll add is that we were talking about partners on things, and Rodney's over. You're with UNM still, right, Rod? One of the things that UNM did last year, I don't know if Rodney or somebody else has presented on it, but it was a look at student, staff, and faculty of higher ed across the state and their housing and food instability. Or insecurity, I should say. And so that was a pretty amazing report. And as a result of the work in that report, which I think came out of Honors College at UNM primarily, was some funding through higher education specifically for students, because we have the lottery scholarship that has helped so many people be able to afford that college degree. But when you don't have housing as part of it and you're coming from another part of the state, that's a big stretch. Or even if you're here local.
Well, and just all those costs have gone up.
Everything is so expensive. So I'm putting in the chat my email. So if you guys have questions, something comes up, let me know. I'm happy to respond.
Wow.
I can't type and talk at the same time. So.
Well, there we go. I see it's in the chat now. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, no other questions. Fabulous. But I hope people get out and enjoy the abrijes. I don't know why I can't say that word, but hopefully we'll follow up again as some of these things develop and find out how some of the outcomes and the money is being spent.
Might get to talk to you again next year at this time.
So. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We went a little over. Our next session is scheduled for the 11th of June. A lot of fun stuff coming up with Pride as well as Juneteenth next month. So get out, enjoy the weather before it gets too hot, and see you guys next month. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We welcome your suggestions regarding any scenario involving future public safety echo sessions. For more information, visit www.cabq.gov/echo.